Good evening and welcome to the GMRS 1900 TechNet on this, the 8th day of August 2023. This is Tim, WQRV 903, and I'm your net control for this evening. GMRS 1900 TechNet is a directed net where we discuss matters relating to GMRS and other various topics. While a directed net is in operation, we ask that all radio traffic must go through the net control. So as a reminder, on the first and third Tuesday of each month, there will be the regular 1900 net, as we've always conducted it, with the normal pre-registration and check-in process. On the second and fourth Tuesday of each month, we'll now have the 1900 TechNet. There will be no pre-registration or check-in process. On months with a fifth Tuesday, there will be no 1900 net. If you should have any emergency or priority traffic during the net, you are always free to break in at any time. Now, before we get started this evening, I'd like to ask WQUZ 645 if he has any announcements for us. 645?
This is WQZ 645. Thank you, Tim, and good evening to the net. Just wanted to mention a couple of things we've got coming up. Now, this Saturday on the 12th, we've got the net operations class that's scheduled there at 10 a.m. And make sure if you're signed up for that, make sure you are all set and ready to go. And then on Saturday the 19th, we've got our member get-together there at Barrow's Pizza, 11 a.m. And we always have a good time there and talk radio stuff and take care of our appetite there. And at 2:30 p.m., the MCPT has their get-together there in Scottsdale there at the Denny's. And you can always go to the calendar on the website and get more information and sign up for all these events and activities. And then in September, we've got our general meeting coming up on the 9th. That's Saturday the 9th of September. So make sure that you sign up and show up there, and who knows, maybe you'll win the raffle there that time. Well, that's all I have. We'll go ahead and turn it back to that. This is WQZ 645.
And thank you for those announcements, Gary. So let's get on with the net. Well, good evening and welcome to the 1900 TechNet. I'm going to open it up for any tech questions or discussion regarding GMRS or two-way radio. Please respond one at a time with your full call sign and or call sign suffix. Once I have acknowledged the caller, you may state your question and we'll ask for comments. As a reminder, all traffic must go through net control, and after each question has been answered, the original caller will need to clear off with their full FCC call sign. So let's get our first caller to call in right now with your call sign. 5. I heard about one part of a syllable and no call sign.
RWR 725.
725. What's your question tonight?
Just about interference and best way to handle that, and any recourse, how to handle that or report that. It hasn't been necessarily on any of the club repeaters, but just on one of the tower repeaters. It's just getting real bad. And other than ignoring it, just if there's any suggestions or any general procedures for when somebody's being a jerk. And I'll just throw it back to net control. WR 725.
Okay, WR 725. That's a good question. And I was going to ask you a steering question to see if you were talking about atmospheric interference or some other type of interference, but it's become clear that you're talking about somebody who's intentionally interfering with repeater transmissions. I'm going to give my 2 cents worth, and then we'll let anybody else chime in who also has other comments. And my thought is, well, they're doing it for a reason, and a lot of times it's to get a response, to get somebody riled up, and a lot of times if you ignore them, they just go away. However, gathering information wouldn't hurt. As much information as you can gather, reset. So that in the event of needing to report it to the FCC, you'll have as much information on the person as you can, and pay attention to the sound of their voice, because if they call in and sign in with their regular call sign at some future time, you may be able to figure out actually who the person is that's doing it. That's all I have for comments. I'd like to throw it out to the group, see if anybody else has any ideas. Okay, was that you, Bubba?
Sure, I got something to throw in there. I know he's talking about the 575, and the problem there, and yes, you were right with all your stuff. I record, and we do a lot of things. We also, with my ham group, we have what's called the Doppler system, and anybody can Google that. And it's a radio frequency tracker, and it records also. And once we catch this guy, then we send it to the FCC, and the FCC's already been notified, by the way. And anybody else who'd like to comment to the FCC, that's good, because the more people that comment, the more they'll put into it and help us out. And this WRPY 760, back to net control.
Excellent contribution there, Bubba. It's good to have somebody that's got that expertise in having done this before, and I know there are systems out there, and so it's always good to be able to help each other triangulate and figure out where this is coming from, or whatever you can determine. Anybody else have any comments about intentional interference on a repeater system?
942.
Hey, Chris, go ahead.
Same thing as Bubba. We have a Doppler system as well. It is ready for rapid deployment at a moment's notice. Just anything on our repeaters, just let us know, either through emails, contact page, or however. Don't say anything on the radio, because that's what the person's wanting. They're just trying to get somebody riled up. And Bubba, if we ever want to collaborate on tracking somebody down with 2 systems together, let us know. We can help with that. WQWI 942, back to net.
Thanks for that, Chris. Yep, I kind of already knew that we did have one, but I wanted to let you be the guy to announce it. And so are there any other comments about intentional interference on GMRS? We've got some good resources and some excellent ways of handling this, and so hopefully it won't happen on our repeater, although I do know that when we first started out way back in 2013, 2014, something like that, there were some repeated kerchunkers and people making animal noises and things like that, but eventually they went away. All right, so thanks for that question, 725, and we're going to go on to the next question.
347 with a grounding question.
Okay, 347, go ahead. What's your question?
So I have a tripod with my antenna on a cement porch. What is the best way to try to ground this baby?
That's a good question, and the tripod itself, is it like Tapcons or something holding it down, or bolts into the concrete or anything?
It's being held down on all four sides by a heavy-duty cement block.
Okay. I'm going to give you my suggestion. We'll see if there's anybody else out there that has any alternating view. If it was me, I would go down to like Home Depot or Lowe's, whichever is your favorite. They have long ground rods. I think some of them, they have a 10-foot ground rod, and I think they have shorter ones. And drive that baby into the ground all the way. Just leave about a couple of inches sticking up. Get a ground clamp and some really heavy-duty wire. I personally use 6-gauge THHN because it's got an insulated outer covering and makes it look nicer. And then you just connect that directly to your tripod. You could take and put a lug on the end of the THHN and then use a tech screw, self-tapping screw, to screw it to one of the legs. I think I accidentally timed out. So I think you got the gist of it. I wonder if anybody else has any other comments or suggestions.
WRCM 701.
WRCM 701, go ahead, Bob.
I think most, from what I've read, ground rods are usually about 4-foot solid copper. I think if you go to one of those stores, you'll find that they're 4-foot copper rods. Second one, instead of using concrete blocks on the to hold the tower down, I would suggest sandbags. Less likely to, if the tower starts rocking, less likely for the blocks to fall off, and the sandbags leave it a little bit, give it a little give and take. So WRCM 701.
Okay, well, maybe I thought they were longer because driving it into this ground is quite a chore. But I do think I did see some that were longer than 4 feet at one of those home supply stores. Generally, the ones I've found have been copper-covered steel. It's a steel ground rod with copper coating. I don't think I've seen any pure copper ones. But, Bob, if you know where to get the ones that are all copper, those would certainly be a little bit better conductor. Did that answer your question adequately?
Yes, sir. Thank you, gentlemen, for your help. WRWP 347 monitoring.
Hey, all right, time for another question. It is 7:11 p.m., and this is the Arizona GMRS Repeater Club 1900 TechNet, open for anybody who has a technical question. Please come now with your full call sign. Guys, don't be shy. Is there anybody out there with a technical question? Or just a question about two-way radio in general?
645.
A pile up. I heard 645.
Yeah. 348 is calling you. Apparently you're not hearing them. Are you in monitor mode?
My finger accidentally bumped the switch and I was out of monitor mode for a while. Sorry about that.
Okay, WQZ 645.
The caller that was calling out there, go ahead.
WRWZ 982.
BRWZ 982, go ahead with your question.
982, I've got a buddy who's a member of the club here. He's in San Bernardino, California. He's asking me if it's possible he could go ahead and listen to the chatter we're doing now on Zello.
That is a definite yes, I believe. Let's have Chris weigh in on that, WI942.
Sorry, all I caught was Zello. I'm outside working. Zello is up and working for any member to be able to listen and talk on the repeaters, if that's the question.
I guess you just have to get your buddy on Zello, and they can log in, and then they can listen all they want.
I'll go ahead and relay that info. Appreciate it. WRWZ 982.
Okay, thanks for that Zello question, and Chris, thanks for responding. Ready for another question? Anybody out there have a question about two-way radio, GMRS, or those type of technical questions? Go ahead. Your ROE 348, go ahead. Okay, my understanding is the heavier of a conductor you get to connect those things, the better, because we're talking about a lot of current in a lightning strike, and also it helps if there's as low of resistance possible between connections, so that it just voltage differentials that build up as a result of static discharge. There doesn't get a ground electrical potential between the different ground rod sites. Does anybody else have any other comments about that? This is WQRV 903. Okay, 348. I know somebody who is who's very, very proficient with grounding and bonding. If you send me an email at communications@azgmrs.org, that's communications@azgmrs.org, I will get you two guys in contact, and he can answer all your grounding and bonding questions. Okay, the guy's name that owns the repeater, and he also owns the 575 on Towers, the 575 in Flagstaff, the 575 in Diamond Point, and the 575 on Greens Peak. His name is Chris Salgett, and you can also get his contact information from me by sending me an email at communications@azgmrs.org. Don't forget to sign off with your full call sign. Thanks for that, and good questions tonight. Let's see if anybody else has any other questions out there tonight. This is the Arizona GMRS Repeater Club, 1900 TechNet, and this is Tim, WQRV 903. I'm your net control. Come now with your full call sign. 411.
I have a procedural question. I drive back and forth to work every morning and listen to Gary, Mr. 645 on the traffic net. And in the mornings, he does, ask for traffic and starts up the net and everything. I never hear him close the net because I'm at work by then, and I occasionally hear him in the afternoon where he just starts it up again and comes out with a nice traffic report at 4:30. I was just curious, and I may be missing something because I don't hear anything sign off. Why is it that in the morning there's the ask for traffic and priority messages and so on and so forth, but not in the afternoon? Just curious.
Okay, well, let's have Mr. Gary chime in on that. 645?
Yeah, this is WQZ 645, and that is just a oversight, basically. I should be doing that in the afternoon, and that does happen a lot of times, but not every time. So he's absolutely right about that. This is WQZ 645.
Hey, 411, do you have any other questions for us tonight?
I noticed inconsistency and wasn't complaining at all, just curious.
Accidentally doubled with you. All right, well, thank you for that. Do you have any other questions tonight?
That'll do it. Thank you very much. WRTI 411.
Okay, we've had some great questions tonight. Let's see if there's any others out there. Come now with your call sign.
I don't actually have a question. I just wanted to say well done for taking the net. And this is WRMV920. This is London Tim over here, just waving a hand. So yeah, brilliant. Love the TechNet. Just wanted to say I was listening.
Okay, great. Good to hear from you, Tim. Other Tim, London Tim. And I will continue to strive to meet everybody's expectations and hopefully don't let anybody down. So appreciate that comment, and good to have you on here listening. With Tim signed off, let's go on to the next question.
WRPS 328.
WRPS 328, go ahead.
Good evening, Tim. Say, I am getting ready to take a road trip in the near future to Vancouver, Washington, and I'm wondering what is everyone's feeling about the most popular type of radio system being used for communications, like on the roads these days, GMRS, amateur radio, CB. Does anybody have a feel for which one might, be a good one to monitor and try to communicate with?
Okay, that's an excellent question. And are you also a ham?
I am.
Well, I'll tell you what I do, and anybody else can chime in with what they do. I plan out our trip, and I find out what highways we're going to be on and what open GMRS repeaters are along that route. In other words, ones that either use a travel tone or they tell you if you write to them through mygmrs.com and ask them for permission to use their repeater. I program those into my radio, and I usually do it in banks based on, what state I'm in along the way. For instance, I have a bank for Arizona, and then I have one for New Mexico and one for Colorado for when we go up to visit our son and daughter-in-law in the Centennial, Colorado. I also carry with me my 2-meter VHF rig, and of course on my GMRS radio, which goes down to 440 megahertz, or 400 megahertz actually, I program a bunch of 70 centimeter frequencies in there. And although I plan to at some future trip, I do not currently have a CB mounted in my truck. So we have communications on 2-meter ham, 70 centimeter ham, GMRS, and someday in the future, CB. And then I, of course, program the 2-meter rig the same way with the frequencies along the line that I get from the radio reference, and then same thing for my 70 centimeter ham frequencies. So I hope that answers your question. Let's see if anybody else has any comments on what they do.
60.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you what, and I'm not paid by these guys or nothing, but any tone is a very good radio. It does the 2 meters, the 70 centimeters, and the GMRS right out of the box. And you really can't beat that. And with one radio, you can also have a CB, which I do have also. So that's just a thought, the M-tone. And it's also on the club suggested radio list. WRPY 760, back to net control.
Yep, I have one of those too, although I don't use it in my mobile. I just bought it to program and play around with and learn on, but who knows, I might consolidate all my radios into one at some future point in time. One thing to keep in mind, though, you need to have a dual band antenna connected to it, or you need to run a diplexer to 2 separate antennas. The dual band antennas tend to be compromised in gain. The separate antennas through a diplexer, you do make up quite a bit more gain, but you lose a little bit through the diplexer. So that's a couple of different ways of looking at things. Let's see if anybody else has any comments out there about what you'd like to travel with on the road as far as your radio gear.
WRVG 584.
584.
Tim, it's Frank. Hopefully everybody's having a good night. I just got back from a 6,500-mile road trip, and honestly, I didn't even really look at GMRS much because it seems like once you get out of the Southwest, it gets pretty sparse. It's just not as popular in other parts of the country. It could be in the Northwest, but it definitely wasn't in the Midwest. So what I was on was DMR. It's awesome. You get a hot spot, and you can talk on the road wherever you're at, and you're not trying to switch between repeaters and all that good stuff. So if you're amateur radio, I would look into DMR. Absolutely love it, and made some good contacts all over the country. And like I said, I wasn't switching around. I was also using 2 meter and 10 meter, but again, you're talking to local people in those areas. If you want to talk to people in certain states or countries, DMR, digital mobile radio, is the way to go on amateur radio. Back to net, WRVG 584.
Thanks for that, Frank. I hadn't thought about DMR, although I do have DMR capabilities on a couple of my different radios. I've never tried it mobile. Anybody else have any comments about what radios to use on the road?
Check, please.
Thanks. Okay, didn't hear who that was.
Recheck, please. WRPY 760.
Bubba, go ahead with recheck.
At any tone, it also does DMR. I just want to throw that in there. WRPY 760, back to net control.
Yeah, the 578 does definitely do DMR, as well as the 878 handheld. So you could even use the handheld and hook it up to an outside antenna. Anybody else have any comments about radios to use on the road?
I got a quickie DMR comment. This is 920.
Somebody was doubling with you, Tim, but go ahead, 920.
I was going to say that I think DMR is a bit of fun too, quite honestly. Obviously, it's only available to those of us that have got our ham license, but I'm not sure that DMR, I haven't done a road trip with DMR, so I'm going to say that DMR is, it doesn't seem road trip friendly to me. I mean, I think that the other station that talked about it being something to have in your toolkit is certainly fun, but most DMR guys are like talking around the world. They're talking to Chinese people, they're talking to English people, they're talking to German people. Whether it's a help on the road, I'm not really sure, you know, specifically here in the United States. So DMR is really fun. It's also unbelievably complicated to program. And that's my 2 cents worth. So I'll just say I'm not sure that. And that's my 2 cents worth. So I'll just say I'm not sure that DMR is an on-the-road radio, but certainly it's something to learn, and it's definitely fun. WRMV 920.
Tim, that was a good point, and I'll throw my 2 cents in regarding that. It's related. With a DMR, and if you have a hotspot, you still need to connect it to the internet somehow in order to get on all these networks that talk all over the world, and so you're still reliant on your cell phone. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the original question from 328 was in regard to being able to talk to some other human being if all other forms of communication aren't available, such as cell phone or whatever, that there's someone who could reach you or you could reach in case of needing help. And so that's why I went to talking about 70 centimeters, 2 meters, and GMRS. If I was just on a road trip to have fun and just talk to people to while away the hours behind the windshield, I think DMR would be a great option.
But you're right, but DMR is not really the emergency go-to, but it's definitely a bit of fun. All right, very good, Tim. Thanks a lot. WRMV 920.
Thanks a lot for checking back in there, Tim, and Bubba for your comments, and also Frank. 328, did we answer your question, or do we need to go for another round and see if anybody else has any ideas?
No, that's a lot of information. Tim, I was just curious, like in your particular case and your experience when you're traveling, which seems to have more activity? Would it be the GMRS or the amateur radio?
I'm going to go along with Frank. GMRS gets really sparse when you leave Arizona. There is a considerable amount of GMRS activity northern Arizona. You can hit all along 40 in various places. You can hit it's by Greer. I can't think of the name of the stupid thing anyway, you can hit that one. Then you go into New Mexico, and there are several really high-level GMRS repeaters that you can hit for long, long, long ways. Having said that, ham definitely has more active people and active repeaters along the way. That's just my 2 cents worth. WQRV 903.
To repeater book, and I found all the stations in Arizona, California, Oregon, and Washington, and program them into my 935 in different banks, so that as I go along, I can switch bank and scan per state. So that's kind of like what my plan was going to be, and see what kind of activity I could listen into and make contacts.
Sounds like a good plan, and my plan seems to be working for now. I've got my general, so at some point in time it would be fun to put a all-band rig in there and work 20 meters while I'm driving, but my wife kind of likes me to talk to her while we're on the road together, if you know what I mean. I think we've exhausted this question, so go ahead and give us your full call sign back to net, and we'll do a station identification here.
Alrighty, this would be a good experiment that I'm going to run. So appreciate all the information. This is WRPS 328, back to the net.
By all means, let us know how that experiment works. It's the bottom of the hour, and this is the Arizona GMRS Repeater Club TechNet for this Tuesday. This is Tim, WQRV 903, your net control, and we're ready for another question for the TechNet.
335.
35, go ahead.
I add on a little bit about GMRS for traveling.
Hey, go ahead.
Finding more and more GMRS stations in California are becoming permission required. Apparently because Southern California a lot of the repeaters are just getting hit with interference and intentional interference. And more stations, especially up 99 and Interstate 5 in the Central Valley, are closed repeaters.
Okay, and that's just part of the part of the problem as GMRS becomes more and more popular. You're going to probably start seeing a lot more closed repeaters or permission required. So any other comments, Ken?
Yeah, you'll probably find more activity on the bubble pack interstitial channels than you would GMRS, the main GMRS channels. Of course, they're short range, so you'll hear them a little bit, and then you won't hear them. But you'll hear more there on those channels than you would anyplace else. At least in my travels, that's what I found when I leave this area. And the CB, it's dead. Even the FM CB is essentially dead. Back to the net, WQJT335.
Okay, thanks for that comment. And I have been curious about FMCB. Have never tried it, but there are a couple FMCB radios out there on the market that look interesting. And I don't know, if the band opens back up, we might have some things to do. But I thought the truckers still used a lot of CB, but apparently a lot of them are moving over to GMRS. And I agree with your comment about the blister pack radios. Just make sure that you program your radio for no more than 5 watts. WQRV 903. With a comment.
AZGMRS 584 for a comment.
Another person with a comment stepped on you a little bit, but I think I got the gist of that. CB is definitely not dead, according to Matt. Thank you for those comments. Did you have anything else for us? Thank you for that. And I think I heard Frank tried to chime in there, and we're going to let it drop and see if he's out there.
Yeah, hey Tim, it's Frank again, WRVG 584. Sorry, I didn't have monitor mode. Somebody must have been on Tango talking. Hey, just not to beat a dead horse with DMR, but Tim's points are well taken. It's not an emergency form of communication. My point was, if you're on the road and you want somebody to talk to, and you have cell service, which most of the country, you have pretty decent cell service anymore between 4G, 5G, it's a good option because you're not switching all over, trying to find repeaters as you drive, wondering if you're in range. If you want to listen or talk, it's the way to go on a road trip. I went all the way from northern Minnesota through North Dakota, Wyoming, all the way through Utah, and was listening on my hotspot the whole way. I'm running an Open Spot 4 Pro and an Anytone 878 UV2 Plus. I'd recommend that equipment if you're going to be doing some road trips for some entertainment. Anyway, my 2 cents. WRVG 584, back to that.
Hey, thank you for that. And as a reminder, make sure you put your radio in monitor mode for anybody checking in on the travel tone. So let's see if there's any other questions out there for the TechNet. I heard somebody coming in, but you weren't making it. Give it another try.
725 with a comment.
725, go ahead.
I think I'm getting a little too quick with the trigger finger on the push to talk. I need to slow it down a little bit. Just another comment about, when you're traveling, as far as the ham bands, when you're looking at repeater book, look at some of the interconnected systems. There's a listing at the top when you go by state, and there's a bunch of different systems that are all connected where there's multiple repeaters that are connected already. You don't have to do anything on your end. There's some there's some here in Phoenix that you can talk here in Phoenix, and it works all the way up into Flagstaff. There's a big one called the WIN system that connects 100 repeaters all over the U.S. on California, Arizona, Texas, and that's just another way to keep in touch. At least if you're you're in a spot, you're more than likely to get a hold of somebody if you're in an emergency situation, if you're connected to one of those interconnected systems, and if they're on your travel route. So that's just another tool to have in your bag. WR725, back to net.
Thanks for that comment, and I'm glad you mentioned another tool bag to have in your pouch there. I'm going to make a little plug for ham. There are plenty of ham clubs around the valley that offer classes to get your technician license and even above. And I recommend anybody who is a GMRS operator to think about adding ham radio to your toolbox. So having that, let's go on and see if there's any other comments on this question before we move on to another. Okay, no comments heard, so let's go on to another question. Does anybody out there have a question for the TechNet? We have about 22 minutes left. Okay, 326, go ahead.
This is John, WRJI 326. Speaking of truckers there a little while ago, are they primarily still using CB, or are some of them migrating to GMRS?
Well, that would be a question for somebody else. I don't know the answer to that. Let's see if anyone else out there has the answer. Bubba.
As a retired truck driver as of just last January, there's a lot of people still on the CB. It's just they're on different channels. Everybody thinks Channel 19, but it's not very much that anymore. And yes, some of them are going to GMRS, and some of them are going to ham. And like Matt, I know him personally, and yes, he does CB and GMRS. And that's just my thought on the subject. WRPY 760, back to net control.
Okay, 760, thanks for that comment, and we can always count on you to have a wealth of information out there. I appreciate that. Any other comments on this question? All right, this is Tim, WQRV 903, your net control for the Arizona GMRS Repeater Club.
Comment on that ground rod thing you guys were talking about.
More information on the ground rod. Go ahead, Bubba.
You got to remember with DC power, the power is on the outside of the rod, and that's why sometimes you'll have a steel rod that's copper coated. Well, AC is different. AC is on the inside of the wire, and I think that's the difference. Solid is better, don't get me wrong, and if you get a steel-coated one, is what I did is I have a hammer drill, and I just hooked it up to the top of that hammer drill and shot it right into the ground. It took a little while, but I didn't have to swing one sledgehammer. This WRPY 760, back to you.
Thanks for that comment, Bubba, and hammer drill is definitely a good way to go. I'll tell you, this ground that we have out here, even if you soak it a little while before, you're still going to have a hard time getting that ground rod down through that caliche. Any other questions for the TechNet tonight? I heard somebody on one of our linked repeaters or Zello, so we didn't get any information, just the triple beep. So go ahead. Go ahead.
It's been my experience that you only want one grounding point for your system. If you have multiple grounding points, then it's susceptible to having noise between the two grounding systems. And this is for a telecom engineer that I used to work with many, many years ago. Back to the net, WQJT 335.
Yeah, then that's why I made the comment about keeping the DC resistance between the grounding points as low as possible. I personally have my 3 antennas grounded to our house ground and not to a separate ground rod also. So that's a good way to think about it. And if you can ground telecom stuff, you can ground pretty much anything. All right, any other questions tonight for the TechNet?
Comment one more time on that ground thing.
Go ahead, Bubba.
Absolutely correct with the resistance between ground rod to ground rod. I have 3 currently on my property, and one of them is the AC for the house. But you have to tie them all together. You just can't use a ground rod here for this radio and a ground rod there. You need to tie them all together to keep your resistance as low as possible. WRPY 760, back to net control.
Actually, that would probably be, since there's been so much conversation about that, that actually be probably a good conversation for a class at some point in time, if I can enlist my friend's help that knows all about this kind of thing, who is also a ham, also a member of our club, and is the technician that works for my company. So we'll see if we can rope him into doing a little bit of tutorial for us. This is Tim, WQRV 903. Are there any other questions for the net tonight before we close it up?
357.
Go ahead, 357.
Actually, 257, WRMR 257. I'm going to just throw this out there. You may not be able to answer it now, and that's fine. But like where my equipment comes into the house, it's totally the opposite end of the house. So if I was going to tie my grounds together, I'd have to run a wire probably well over 100 feet, 125 feet from one ground rod to the other to bond them together, and I would think that would create problems. That's why I ended up putting a ground rod outside where my radios come into the house. I don't know. Just throwing it out there. WRMR 257, back to you, Tim.
Okay, 257, thank you for that comment. And that is a extreme condition, and you would definitely create some very high, not very high resistance, but to a lightning strike, high resistance between those two grounds. And it would not be recommended. You know, if I was in that particular position and I had to connect them to, I'd probably use a copper plumbing pipe and flatten it down and bolt and solder them together at all the joints to make that connection to get as low resistance as possible. But in those types of situations, I think you're going to have to go with multiple grounds. Any other comments about that?
4-2.
4-2, go ahead.
Yep, from everything I've been taught, read, and working at Honeywell, soldering is the last thing you want to do on a earth grounding system. The solder just blows away and other issues with it as well. WQWI 942.
Okay, good wisdom. I guess then just using bolting them together and using multiple bolts to hold the stuff together if you're going to do that kind of a grounding system. The Amateur Radio, ARRL, Amateur Radio Relay League, has a very good book about bonding and grounding. I think you can get it at if they have it, but that would be a good way to get a lot of knowledge about grounding and bonding your tower, your tripod, your mast, whatever you have that your antenna is mounted on. WQRV 903, this is the TechNet, and we're ready for some more questions. 658, go ahead. All right, I'll try and answer that. Number one, you're sounding pretty good with your antenna that you got now, getting a good signal into the repeater, but obviously being able to get more distance is always desirable. The FCC says you can have an antenna 20 feet above the highest point of your structure to which it is mounted. So if you go with a eave mount or some type of mount near the peak of your roof, that would be a good location. Get it up away from any obstructions, and then use the lowest loss cable to get from there to your radio. And LMR 400 is probably the most common. Another brand of cable made for the same purpose is called CNT 400, and it's an extremely low loss cable. There are lower loss cables, but they get so thick and unwieldy that it may not be practical. If you're talking about under 50 feet, probably LMR 400 would be just fine. Does that answer your question? That's an option. You can certainly give that a try. How tall is the flagpole? There are online distance calculators you can use to figure out how far you'll get on simplex. If most of the talking you do on a repeater is on repeaters, and you're not that concerned about talking great distances on simplex, then anything you get that gets a full quieting signal into the repeater, anything over that is just overkill. So whatever it takes to get into the repeaters that you want to use with a good signal and something like you just described would probably work just fine. With that comment?
Yeah, you're absolutely right there, but there's a lot of people that use just simplex, like Gary and his emergency crew, and height is might. That's all you got to remember with an antenna. The higher up, the more might you have in simplex mode. But you're absolutely right with the repeater. Anything more than you need is too much. This WRBY 760, back to net control.
Okay, 658, did that answer your question? I missed some of your letters there. WR, what was it? Thank you so much. Thanks for your question, and Bubba, thanks for that comment. Height is might. If you're going to work a lot of simplex, though, that's definitely something you want to focus on, is getting that loss as low as possible between the radio and the antenna, using the highest gain antenna you can afford, and, of course, getting it up there above obstacles in the area, and staying within the FCC guidelines of 20 feet above the highest point of the thing that it's attached. So if it's on your house, 20 feet above the highest point of your house. WQRV 903. This is the Arizona GMRS Repeater Club, TechNet, and do we have any other questions out there?
328.
Okay, 328, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Earlier this evening, Bubba mentioned that there's an anytone radio out there that operates on 2 meter, 70 centimeter, and GMRS. And I was wondering what model number would that be specifically for the one that is not the handheld.
Okay, you got to be real specific with the anytone because there's two versions. Essentially, they're the same radio of the mobile, but includes the UHF band and the VHF band, of which 2 meters and 70 centimeters are part, and that one is Part 90 approved, so you can use it for commercial purposes. Hang tight for those model numbers.
Comment on the model number.
Have it, Bubba?
Got the box right in front of me. The one I'm talking on now is model number AT-D578UV Pro. And now right out of the box, it'll do 70 centimeters, 2 meters, and it'll also do GMRS. And D578UV3 Pro. And when I got it, I saw the box and it said ATD578UV Pro. Didn't have the 3 in it. So I looked on the radio, on the chassis where the label is. Same thing, did not have the 3. So I called them and they said, oh, turn it on, and after you go to the second screen or whatever you do, after it boots up, then you'll see that it is actually an AT-D578UV3 Pro. So if you buy the current model, it's going to be the 3, and it's going to be all set up, for commercial or ham. Except 220 won't be in there.
Comment?
With the comment?
WRWR 725. I'm using the Anytone AT5888UV, and there's also a 588U3, which is a tri-band. The 588UV, what I'm using, is a dual band, and it's Part 90 certified, so it gets 70 centimeter, 2 meter, and gets into the GMRS bands as well too. So just as another option for you. WRWR 725. Back to net.
Thanks for that additional comment. I had forgotten about the 588, and I'm not familiar with it. So if anybody else out there has one and you want to send me your comments, send them to communications@azgmrs.net. No, azgmrs.org. Yeah, communications@azgmrs.org. Okay, do we have any other questions before we go on? Go ahead. Hey, Brian, those are good comments. Thanks for that. And I would like to have a discussion with you how the ham version is Part 90 when it has 220 megahertz and the VFO is still operational. But that's a subject for another time. We should get together for coffee about that. And we are basically out of time. We have about 2 minutes left, which doesn't leave us much other than signing off. So we appreciate everyone who called in tonight, all the questions, all the comments, And those out there just listening that didn't have the either time or inclination to push the mic button and ask a question, hope you do next time. But this is Tim, WQRV 903, and I would like to thank WPRR 517 for hosting the High Power 550 repeater, as well as the Scottsdale 700 repeater. And I'd like to, again, thank everybody who checked in and participated. Hope to hear you all back here next week. So this is Tim, WQRV 903, net control for the GMRS 1900 net, actually the GMRS 1900 Tech net. We'll now return the repeater to its normal operation. Good night, everyone.
WQRV 903, this is WRMV 920. Well done, my friend. What an amazing net. Absolutely high.
Okay, Mr. Tim, thank you so much for that compliment. I appreciate you. WQRV 903, I'll be clear. Okay, there's going to be CNT 400 or LMR 400, and by the way, I have lots of it in stock. Yepers, you've got, you can go to the club roster, and my email will be in there. Or you can just send it to communications@azgmrs.org, and we'll schedule time to get together. Okay, this is WQRV 903, and we've stepped on the AESG net, so we better let Gary take this repeater over. Go ahead, Gary.
Well, good evening. This is Gary, WQZ 645, and I'll be your net control for the Arizona Emergency Services Group net. This net is normally conducted after the Tuesday night 1900 net concludes. The Arizona Emergency Services Group, or AESG, is part of the Arizona GMRS Repeater Club. The volunteers in our group are a team of licensed GMRS operators, and many are also ham radio operators. We receive training and also conduct exercises to expand our skills. Those who are dual licensed have an extra tool in their radio toolbox. The purpose of this net is perform a regular test of communications equipment, provide training in emergency procedures, and exchange information related to preparedness. All nets, whether for training exercises, events, or incidents, are directed nets. Now, if you're interested in joining our group, just send us an email, esg@azgmrs.org. Any station may break in at any time with emergency or priority traffic. Is there any such traffic at this time? If not, we're going to continue with the net. Those who have already checked in online don't have to check in over the air. Any station that has not checked in online can check in now. Go ahead and call in with your name and call sign. Jim, WR834.
Michelle Guy, WRQI 411.
Okay, 411, we got you checked in. Any other stations? Okay, Tim, I think that was 834. Your signal is not too strong, but we can get most of that. Okay, any other stations that would like to check in tonight? Okay, very good. This is WQZ 645 Net Control. And just a reminder, we've got the Net Operations class coming up on this Saturday at 10 a.m., so don't forget about that. If you are already signed up for that, then you should be all set. And then other than that, we're pretty well set up because that will end up our emergency communications course, and those who complete the class on Saturday, well, they will be ready for their certificate. Now, the topic for tonight is information sources in an emergency situation, and you've got situations where a lot of situations happen where you have a major emergency. It could be at the very beginning of the incident, you've got quite a bit of confusion, and a lot of times you have some bad information or some rumors and that type of thing. So that does not help matters out at all. So it's important to have a good source of information. So tonight we're going to look at the different sources of information and how they are relatively in getting good information. And then we're going to start out with a question for everybody. And that question is, what is the best source of information during a major emergency? And we're talking about a local situation. So what is the best source for information? And this is WQZ 645 Net Control. We're going to start out here with the roster list and head on down the list here. Now we're going to start out first with, we're going to see what kind of answers we get and if those answers kind of coincide with the general consensus on that. So let's go to 942. Chris, you out there?
I really need to hack that list and put my name somewhere else in it. I'm always first. For me, it depends on the situation. First go-to usually is my scanners to get the direct info. Television news, I always have that up playing above my desk as well, just to keep an eye on things when I'm doing other work and stuff like that. WQWI 942, back to net.
Okay, copy that. So we've got your scanner receivers and your TV news. You're going to get some information from that. That's a couple of good ones right there. And then let's go down to Attila 795. You out there tonight?
Good evening, Gary. Yes, I'm here. And I would say that first I would check on the radio, local radio, like the 550 AM. They receive, any emergency information, even for the Fed. WQWS 795.
Okay, very good, Attila. That's a good answer right there. I like that one. And then let's go over to Jeff 533.
Good evening, Gary. Good evening, everybody. Like Attila, my first go is the radio. I tend to default to KJZZ 91.5 FM, WQZZ 533.
Okay, copy that. So we're talking about listening to news from the radio and getting that information there, a local station, I'm assuming. And then let's go over to Tim. Are you out there tonight, or are you not available anymore? Okay, it looks like he is not available. So let's go over to Dean 966. And let's try Cynthia, 274.
This is Cynthia, 274. If you have a police scanner, or then that might be a good source.
Okay, good answer there. Let's go over to Brent, 299. And let's go over to Thomas, 347. Thomas, 347, you out there? Okay, let's go down to James, 736. And let's go to Bob, 729.
Good evening, Gary. Thanks for taking the net. And in terms of official sources for information on like evacuations and such, I'm going to go with the press releases and information coming from the PIOs of the agency. WRPW 729.
Okay, very good. So that can be a pretty reliable source of information there. Let's go over to Dave, 273. And let's go to Kenny, 335.
Yeah, this is Kenny, WQJT335 in Sun City West. I would really rely on the public safety channels, via the scanner for the juicy stuff, because I would think a lot of it, that stuff would be encrypted. News media is probably the quickest. They usually have reporters and investigators, out there at the incident as quickly as possible. So I think that would probably be the best. Back to the net, WQJT335.
Okay, copy that, 335. Good answer there. Local news media, and also if you can get the channels with the scanner receivers for public safety agencies. Then let's go over to Gary, 348. Okay, let's try Mel 947. And Bubby, you still out there, 760? Okay, let's go to Deneen, 731.
I actually took your question to mean what's the most accurate would be the first person who saw it, so direct sight.
Okay, yeah, we were just looking for probably the best and most reliable source of information. So were you saying that a person on site there of the emergency?
The first person who reported it would have the most accurate information.
Okay, copy that. That's a good answer there. So somebody on site there. I will go ahead and let you clear with your call sign.
WRW Z731, back to net.
Okay, that's a good answer right there. Let's go over to Dave, 513. And let's try Tim 834. And let's go over to WRQI 411. You out there?
Yes, Gary. I keep my head in the sand because I have so many people around me that when something comes up, it seems like I'm the first person they notified to take action. So I get to just remain focused and oblivious until something comes up. 411.
Okay, copy that. Well, sometimes it's good to just kind of keep aware of what's going on there. That's because that's what I do. I am in the habit of keeping aware of what's going on. But that's a good answer. Any other stations that would like to check in tonight? Okay, was that 827?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I may have doubled with you, Gary.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, 827. Okay, 827, go right ahead. Yeah. Okay, I think you're trying to come through Zello, but there seems to be a bit of an issue there. We can have you go ahead and call back in here in just a little bit. This is WQZ 645 Net Control. So we had a lot of good answers there, a lot of different ones, and we're going to go through various different sources of information, but basically I did want to mention that the most reliable, considered the most reliable source of information is local officials who have people at the scene. Local officials who have people at the scene. So one of the first ones we're going to look at is social media. Social media as a source of information. And social media is not really considered a very reliable source of information because, of course, anybody can go ahead and post on there, and it may not be correct information. It may be exaggerated, and it may be someone who's posting who's not even there at the location. They don't really know what's going on. So social media is not really considered a reliable source of information, with one exception. If it's a post from a regular, local, recognized news media company, then it's a bit more reliable. Then the next source we have is the local news media. And local news media can be a good source of information. They can also be a source of information that is exaggerated, because sometimes they will try and make things seem more serious than it actually is, because then they get more viewers. So we have to keep in mind that local news media can have different reasons for changing the information or using different wording sometimes. So you have to keep that in mind. But generally, it's a good source of information as long as we know that that particular station or TV media agency is a good one. Now, I used to work in a situation where I was completely aware of local emergency information because I worked for a municipality. And what I found in my experience was that the news media, even when they were just reporting what should have been facts and not any kind of opinion, in my experience, they got information wrong about 1/3 of the time. So that's something to keep in mind. News media is not always the best source of information because sometimes things go through a filter, and sometimes they're in a big hurry to get something on the air and they don't verify information. So just a couple things to keep in mind about the news media. Then we have official notifications that you can sign up for on your phone from official agencies. Also, agency websites, and the EAS or emergency alert system that, or the wireless emergency alerts that come over your phone that are official. Those are good sources of information right there, and they have no real reason to change any information other than to give you factual information. Another source of information would be the FEMA app or other agency apps for emergency notification. Now, Maricopa County Emergency Management has an app. You can go to their website, and you can get information on their app and download it and set it up on your phone for notification. The same thing for the FEMA app. You can download that as well. And then another source is, of course, GMRS radio, 550, the AESG. We're going to be putting out information if there's anything serious going on in our area here, and we'll try to verify all that information. Then we're going to go to another source of information that several people mention, and that is monitoring local public safety radio traffic. And you can do that in several different ways now with scanner receivers, and that's a whole other area to check into. There's analog, there's digital, there's trunked, and you have to kind of look into that a little bit. For frequency and other information, you can go to radioreference.com. And for sources of scanner receivers, just a couple of examples are HRO, ham radio outlet, and scannermaster.com. Now, one of the problems, of course, is that a lot of law enforcement agencies are going to encryption so that you can't hear what is being said or only on certain channels. But keep in mind that fire and EMS frequencies are normally not encrypted, and they're a good source, can be a good source of information. You've got people right on the scene reporting what's going on. And you can also listen to public safety agencies online and also through phone apps. Really good setup where you can go online and listen to a whole bunch of different public safety agencies in the valley here. And I want to turn it over to Chris 942 because he set that up, and I want him, ask him to go ahead and explain that a little bit, how that works, where we can get it, and how you go to the website and where you go in the menu system to locate that. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. So, for club members, we have the online scanner that I've set up. I have a huge Dell server with a ton of receiver cards and dongles plugged into it, and I got tons of different systems, and I'll go into that in a second here. Reset. So for club members, if you're logged into the website, AZGMRS.org, under the member area menu, you'll see the radio scanner recordings menu in there in the drop down. If you go to that, that takes you to our scanner page. That is a semi-live feed. What it does is it records it on my local server each transmission and then uploads it to the main server, so it's delayed by a few seconds, but not bad at all. And there you can select all the different systems, being agencies or tower sites and things like that. Example being RWC handles a lot of the Phoenix Fire, Phoenix Police, things like that. Reset. Got the AZ Wind system, that's DPS is on that, and a bunch of other agencies. We got the Maricopa County trunk system, that's MCSO and things like that. I also monitor the APS electric radio system. That's a great source for information of what's happening if power poles down, things like that. I was monitoring the Topaz, but out here in Whitman, it's a little hard to reach. I am working to get a link up for a remote server. There's one in Mesa, Brent's hosting. I'll get that up here soon, hopefully. Reset. And then we also have our GMRS channels as well. So to use the system, there's if you scroll down the page, there's a how to use thing with the basics of how to get going. Live feed, you click that, you get the green light on that, and you'll start receiving, depending on what talk groups, what agencies and stuff you're selected. To see what you're selected or to change that, in the bottom right, there's a select TG, select talk group. You click that, reset. And then you got a massive list. This list is being cleaned up. The top section is groupings, and then after that you get each system broken down to all its individual talk groups. I'm waiting for a software update still to help manage that list even better. But as you go down, you'll see AZ Winds. I monitor a lot of the DPS, Metro South, Metro West, things like that. The RWC, that's great for the Phoenix Fire. They dispatch, it's the regional dispatch center, so you can get all that traffic. We got the interops, reset. The interop channels are great for, especially if there's big events like Super Bowl or golf or whatever's going on around the valley. Usually all the agencies are on that, and most of it's in the clear. Let's see, you got street transportation, garbage pickup if you're interested in listening to that kind of stuff. Valley Metro Rail. Maricopa County, that's MCSO and a React is great to listen to when they're responding to stuff. APS, they got a lot of their stuff is just called patch, but they do have some actual labeled talk groups in there. I think they're still using some old system. That's what those patches are. And then at the end we got GMRS, reset. And the GMRS channels right now are just the basic channels. I don't have the interstitials in there yet. I got to get another receiver dongle to cover the 467 band. And then the very last one is Banner Hilo, Banner White Tanks. That's for the Banner medical choppers. We provide an internet communication link for their repeater up on the White Tanks, so I'm honored for that to make sure that's all working nice and clear. Once you go through, you can select turn on, off. If you select everything, you're going to have non-stop radio traffic for hours. It's going to queue up. Back on the main screen, reset. Back on the main screen, in the top right, there's a Q with a number right now. I don't have anything on, so it's Q0. If you're monitoring a lot of stuff, or the talk groups you're on has a lot of traffic, you'll start queuing up calls. So if you're on live feed, it'll just play call after call until that queue's ran out, or just keeps building up forever if you have too many things selected. But it'll pop up what the talk group is, frequency, and all that good stuff on the screen as all those that radio chatter happens. You can also search and replay calls in case you need something. Reset. On the bottom left of the main screen, there's search call. If you go into that, that'll display the last calls that the system heard. You can also, there's a little filter at the bottom of that screen, and you can select the system and talk groups if there's something specific like DPS West or something like that that you want to monitor or go back to and listen to. I hold 3 days of recordings. The database just gets really huge with all the systems I monitor to do anymore. Reset. Now let's say you got your system selected, you got the live feed going, and you hear something happening, let's say a car chase on DPS, and it's playing right there. If you hit that hold TG, hold talk group button, click that. That last thing that was playing will lock on to only that talk group and ignore everything else, and that way you can just monitor that channel talk group as long as you want. You unclick that, you go back to everything else that you had before. If you get something going on that, a nuisance channel happening or something, instead of having to go unselect it in the talk groups, you can just hit the avoid button, and that will take it out. Reset. The only thing with the avoid button is if it's a patch channel to another talk group, it's not going to ignore it or avoid it still. They're working on fixing that. But hold system is like kind of same thing as talk group, except this, if it's on the RWC, you hit hold system, all your RWC talk groups that you had selected will play and ignore AZ wins or anything else. Pause, it'll keep queuing up, but not play anything until you unpause, and it'll start playing the queued up stuff. I use that a lot during traffic nets and things. That's the gist of it. That was a real quick overview. But it's fairly easy, and I got the instructions there, and you can always contact me with any other questions, or if anybody has any questions, Gary can pass that on here. WQW I-942, back to net.
This is WQZ645 Net Control. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. And like I said, he's got that set up. It works really well and has a lot of capabilities there. So you've got a lot of capabilities to monitor a lot of different agencies on there and find out what's going on. The only thing I would recommend is, well, if you're going to start out listening to that, don't select too many talk groups at once, because that's too much to listen to, basically. So you've got too many channels going on at once, and it doesn't make sense. So that is something that is another good source of information, and during an emergency, and also through radio reference. There's various other public safety agencies that are streamed on there as well, And radio reference is something that you can go to, of course, and get more information about frequencies and that type of thing. So if you have a brush fire going on, we have someone who actually has a feed for that, and you can listen to information about brush fires and that type of thing as well. So a lot of different capabilities there. Go ahead.
Perfect example of listening to like APS electric. A few days ago, we had a lightning strike. A little tiny cell passed through town, and there was a lightning strike that took out a power pole. On the Whitman Facebook page, somebody said power pole got hit when people were asking why they didn't have power. I was listening. I turned on the APS radio, and within a few minutes, the first technician responding on site reported that yes, a power pole got hit by lightning, and there were 4 power poles down, and they said, they're going to do some jumpers and get a majority of the people back on in a few minutes, and then some people would be out without power for a few hours, and I related that onto the Facebook page there for the Whitman guys. And so having that kind of information, it's same for the fire departments as well. You get a lot of great info from them.
Okay, Chris, I think you timed out there. You want to go ahead and continue with your call sign? Okay, Chris, I think you timed out there. You want to go ahead and continue with your call sign?
Yeah, I was hoping it made it out there. WQW I-942, back to net.
Okay, real good information. And does anybody have any questions for Chris on that system? Go ahead, 328.
Yeah, this online scanner that you've got all set up, it sounds very involved, and I assume that it is not done all with one scanner. Is that am I correct?
942.
I actually do not have any actual scanners or radios plugged into the server. It is all little USB dongles, receiver cards that monitor a swath of bandwidth, and then I got software that can decode the digital signals. WQW I-942, back to net.
348, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. That's very amazing. Wow. Good job, Chris. WRPS 328, back to the net.
Okay, any other stations have any questions? Okay, very good. Any questions or comments for the net tonight before we go ahead and close it up? 942.
Yep, and just for reference, in the last, I think I restarted the server yesterday. I did a quick update on security software. I have recorded roughly 25,000 radio calls on between all the systems that I monitor. WQW I-942.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So, and that's another capability that I think is great that that system has. If you happen to miss a radio call, you can go and search for it because it's recorded and then play it back. So that's another great capability there. Any other questions? Okay, very good. Well, I appreciate everybody that checked into the net tonight. And we're going to go ahead and close her up until the next net. This is WQZ645 Net Control. We're going to return operations back to the repeater, and the frequency is clear.